Hello and welcome to this video tutorial on how to make light trails for the light cycle battles from the Tron movie franchise using Blender 3D. For those unfamiliar with the Tron movie franchise, the light cycle battles are one of the most iconic and visually stunning aspects of the movies. In these battles, there's players, they ride futuristic motorcycles, and they leave behind these light trails as they speed around the game grid, and they try to outmaneuver like other opponents. Creating these light trails in Blender can seem a bit like a daunting task, and I couldn't really find anything online that did it the way it couldn't achieve any of the effects that I was trying. Most people use like particle emissions, so I came up with a way that looks a lot more, that does it more justice really. By the end of the tutorial, you'll have a completely animated glowing light trail that will make your Tron-inspired animations really pop. So whether you're a Tron fan or just looking for some really good visual effects, sit back, grab your computer, and follow along. Alright, so we have here our initial scene. It's basically just a grid which I have as a tile of glass objects, and there's an earth underneath. That's just some simple plane with some textures. I have this light cycle here which I've designed. I'm just naming it light cycle just to keep things simple. I have these rims here. They're already also a single object. I'm calling it rim. And I have this armature which is just a rider. I've already set it up into the pose that we need, and those are the only things that we will need for this tutorial. One important thing that I would like to mention is that this rim and this light cycle should have their centers defined at the center of the rear wheel. This is important just to have everything line up properly, and also because if we want the light cycle to tilt properly, it works really well when it's defined over here. Okay, so the first thing I will do is add a path object. So I'll just do a Shift A and I'll add a curve. I'll add in a path. So right now it's at this level, which is what I want. I want it to be slightly above the ground. Then I'll go into edit mode. I will select this to be the origin. Just bear with me for a second. Set origin to 3D cursor, and then I will set my cursor back here. What I'm trying to do is just have it aligned a bit better, so I'll just do object, snap, selection to cursor. Okay, so what we did is just defined an initial path object, and it starts in the middle over there. I'll call this my track because that's essentially going to define everything I'm going to be building. After this, what I will do is set my cursor to this part, select these two guys, rotate this around the cursor, and I'll do an RZ minus 90 degrees. Where did it go? Where did it go? Oh, there it is. Okay. So it's kind of curving, but it's a bit too small. So I'll just make it a little larger. Scale by, I guess, like 15. That's too big. Let me set it to the median point. Yeah, okay. Let's scale it by 15. Is that good? Maybe a little bit more. Scale by 2. Is that too much? Yeah, I think it's a bit too much. I'll just make it a bit smaller. Okay. So what we have now is an initial track. It sits a little bit above the grid rather. You can use any shape, of course. You can edit it and make it any way you want, but for now I'm just gonna use it this way. Also, I don't like that it's curving too much, so what I'm gonna do is just scale these along the 3D cursor, which I set over there, scale it so that it's just like a slightly tighter turn. I think that's good. And yeah, so that's gonna define my track. So now that that's done, we need to define some kind of profile to animate onto this ribbon, onto this track. So to do that, I'll just move my cursor back here, and I will do this with like a mesh and then convert it to a curve, Let me just rename it as my profile, like that. Yeah. Okay, I'll just go into edit mode, select two of the vertices, delete them, and set the rest. Reset the origin to be in the center of, I guess that's, oh, that didn't work. Set origin mass. Why is that not working? Object set origin. Set origin to geometry? Okay, that's supposed to work. Okay. Snap selection to cursor. Okay, so now we have a profile, but it's a mesh right now, so I'll just convert this to a curve. That's important. Okay, next what I'm gonna do is select this object. I'll go into this part here, and I'll go into this object section, and I will select the profile as the curve. And you might have to actually adjust your profile a little bit more, so let me just start rotating it. I'll try in the x-axis. Let's see if that works, and apply the rotation. That did not work. Let's do Rx 90 degrees again. Apply the this is not working. Okay, let's try y-axis 90 degrees. Apply the rotation. That made it disappear. Let's try that again. 90 degrees. Apply the rotation. Okay. Let's try z 90 degrees. Rotation. Okay. So it seems in my case I have to have the profile aligned this way so that it renders it correctly, but it's a bit too big. So I'll just scale it down, and this will shrink it down a little bit more. That's good. Let me see if I've aligned it the way I want. Nope, not particularly. I think I want it to be somewhere like that. If I move it along the z-axis, that will not help. So what I'm trying to do now is adjust the profile so that it's a little closer to the ground. And you can't do that by just moving it downwards. I mean, you could, but like I want to do this a little differently. Let me just move it to the side so I can see it. Oh wow, that's really small. What happens if I apply the scale? Did that work? No, okay. Yeah, okay. So what I'm gonna do is just go into edit mode, select one of these edges and move it and see. We need the other one. Where did it go? Okay. So this is apparently what ended up at the bottom, and this one is probably what ended up at the top. So I'll just go back and move it along the y-axis. There we go. And I'll just adjust it so that it touches the ground. We can do a little bit extra just for good measure. And that is it. That is our ribbon of light that our light cycle will race on. Great. What's next? Okay, so now that we have a ribbon, it's a start. The only issue is that it's perfectly vertical. We want it to actually like lean in when it's starting to turn. So to do that, let's just go into edit mode on this thing. Select this last part, this apex here. Let's select that, and if I press the N key, I'll open up this window here. That's not what I want. Go to this item part. There's this thing called a tilt, and what this will do is adjust the orientation of this specific vertex. So if I move this to the negative, you'll see it starts to tilt the profile the profile of the track. I think I want to use something like 61 looks good, I guess. Minus 60. Yeah, I like 60. Maybe a bit more. Let's do minus 70. Do I want more? Yes, I want more. let's do minus 100. That's good. Maybe minus 120. Might be a bit much, but it's good for now. It's good. Okay, so now we have a tilting track, and the good thing about this is that it automatically interpolates the tilt in between the vertices of this path. So if you look at it closely, it's perfectly straight in the beginning, and then it starts to slowly tilts to its maximum, and then straightens up again. That's why you can see that's why you can see like a little bit of thickness there. Yeah, yeah, I think what else I'll do is shrink that curvature a bit more, or maybe I'll add a bit more control over here. So maybe add a mean tilt the other way. No, that's not working. Okay, I'll just shrink it to that part. So scale it, shrink it so that it just behaves a bit, so that it's straighter for a larger portion. That's just a personal preference. And I think I like that a lot more. Okay. Okay, so now we have our light trail, or a ribbon of light, as Flynn likes to call it. Next up, what do we need to do? Okay, so now that we have this curved profile, we're actually gonna start animating it. So to do that, I'll just go into this part here, and okay, I want to use 140 frames, so make sure you first set this part to the same number of frames. Once that's done, you need to take this to number 1. Make sure you're at the first frame, and we'll just insert a keyframe by clicking this part here. And that's it, we have a keyframe. Then go to the end of your animation. In my case, it's 140 frames. Move this down all the way to 0, like that, and insert another keyframe. And save your work, make sure you're always saving. Now, if you press play, you'll see that the profile gets animated and it works really well. Yeah, if you want to play with the speed, what you need to do is essentially reduce the frame rate, or reduce the number of frames here, and you'll obviously have to oh, I think I missed one more step. Sorry guys, you gotta set this to spline. You gotta set this to spline, you gotta set this to spline. Okay, let's take a second look at this. Yep, okay, that looks nice. I'll just send this back. Okay. So now we have our ribbon of light animated really nicely. We have a nice tilt. Now we need the bike to follow it. How we're going to do that is kind of indirectly. We'll set up an empty object to follow this curve, and then we'll just parent our light cycle, our rider, and our rims to that empty object. So let's do that. I will just come here, make sure my cursor is, I want my cursor to be over here. I will add an empty, sorry, it's an axis, right? Where is it? Empty, there we go, plain axis. Okay, just apply the location, it's really important. It's going to end up going somewhere else, probably the origin of this entire grid. And on this object, I'll add a constraint called follow path, that's what it's called. I will select the track to be the thing that it follows, and we'll get to that thing in just a second. We will check this follow curve checkbox. Is that what it's called? A checkbox, tick box, whatever. Make sure your seek is at frame 1, and just send this. Oh, we have to go to the negative. Oh, that's weird. Okay, I'll just bring this backwards until, so it's following the track. That's what's happening. And I just want to make sure I'm aligning this before I set a keyframe. In this case, I guess it's exactly negative 140. I wonder if this is related to the frames. Probably. Okay, I'll just set this over here, and I will keyframe this. Very important. Then I will go to the end of my animation, and I will move this guy to 0. And as you can see, our empty is at the end of our ribbon of light, and I will insert a keyframe for this guy as well. Now, if I go back and click play, and if I take a look, it's following it very nicely, it's tilting, and it's going off very nicely. Okay, the next step is, you're almost done. We're going to just parent this to the empty, but we're going to make a slight change. I'll just select my armature, I'll select my light cycle, and I don't need to select this guy actually. So just this guy, and my rims, and I will move it along the x-axis somewhere around here. I think that's good. So the reason why I'm doing this is because if we parent it where it was, what would happen is the the light trail would end up starting from here, and that's not what you want. You want it to start from over here. Yeah. Now that that's done, let's just parent everything to this empty one at a time. So I'll select the rim, and then I'll select the empty, and I'll press Ctrl P and parent it. I'll select the light cycle, I'll select the empty, Ctrl P and parent it. I'll select the rider, I'll select the empty, Ctrl P and parent it, and I think you're done. Let's take a look. Ooh, okay. Everything's working out real nice. Looking real nice. Awesome. Okay. Sometimes you might run into this issue where, if you don't run into this issue, it's fine, but I should at least talk about it. What happens sometimes, when I did this the first time, was during the animation, the bike and the light trail weren't always maintaining an offset. So sometimes the bike would be ahead and the trail would kind of lag behind, and other times the trail would lead and the bike would be lagging behind. So if that happens, you just need to come and fix the interpolation of both of them. How to do that is really simple, and it's probably actually better to do this even if you don't have this issue. But just select this object and you need to go to, what's it called? God dang it. Graph editor, that's the one I want. Okay. So what you're seeing here is essentially an equation that defines the position through time of this animated ribbon of light. All you need to do is select all of them, right click and change the interpolation type to linear. Okay, that kind of messed things up, but we will fix it, don't worry. That's because we're here. Okay, let's just send this back to the beginning. Okay, that's gonna make it linear, which means this is actually good, because now this means your light trail will be animated at constant speed throughout the animation, whereas what we had in the beginning was kind of like an acceleration and a deceleration. So now it's just going to be constant. This also means you need to do the same thing for this empty object, right? This is much clearer. See how this is like an acceleration deceleration thing going on. So just press A to select all the handles, right click and interpolation type, set it to linear, and now everything aligns actually quite well. I thought I was going to have to do a bit of offsetting, but I think it worked. Because I already offset it beforehand. Okay, that's fine. Let's take a look at this and see what we see. Yeah, and now you don't have any lagging leading situation, which is something I was facing before. Again, this might not happen to you if you do things exactly the way I did it. But the good thing about fixing this interpolation type is you get a constant velocity throughout the animation. So let's take a look at this. It's just gonna go. This is a bit too slow. I would like it to be faster. It's a problem for another time. Okay. Yeah. Congratulations, you're done with the animation. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, we took a break and it's nighttime now, but we're back now. So next up, I want to show you guys how to build the material for this ribbon of light. So you might be thinking it might be as simple as just using an emission shader, but if you take a closer look, it's not like that. There's like streaks of really bright parts at the very top and at the very bottom, and the middle part is kind of squiggly. It's not very level, and it's got some translucency to it. So we're gonna implement all of those things. So I'll create a new material and I'll call it ribbon of light. Ribbon of light. Yeah, I've done this before, which is why it's clashing, but that's fine. We're building this from scratch. I'll go to my shading tab so that we can see what we're doing a little better. I'm going to approach this problem by using a wave texture. I'll do it like this. I'll press Ctrl T, so that just automatically gives me my texture coordinate and mapping node. And I will plug this guy into my base color so I can see what we're doing. And at first glance we see that the bands are all vertical. That's because we need to rotate this by 90 degrees, and that didn't work. Maybe we need to move this guy. No, okay. If this guy didn't work, maybe it's this guy. Oh, okay, it is this guy. Oh, I know why it didn't work last time. Okay, I'm using the wrong one. It is in fact this guy. Yeah, so that looks good. So the white parts correspond, at least they eventually will correspond to the really bright parts, and the dark parts will correspond to the parts that are a little bit translucent. We'll get to that in just a second. I want to add a little bit of distortion to this, so I'll just do a little bit, just not a lot, just something like that. And I will also move it, scale it a bit more on the z-axis, because I want to crunch in that white part and really bring up that brightness there, but also have a lot of transparency. I think that's okay. But if I want to have more control over it, I'll just add a color ramp and I'll plug it in here, and I will put, I think this was working out really well last time, something about there. I'll change this to B-spline so it has like a smoother transition between them. Yeah, I think something like this looks good. Yeah, okay. Let's see what happens if I change this to a nice bright turquoise blue. That's what it does. I'm not too sure. I think this is good. Yeah, something like that, I guess. Maybe I can turn this to a turquoise but a darker shade of it. Maybe we'll see how it goes. And then I'll duplicate this guy, send it down here. I'll use the factor for this part, and so I'll use this bottom color ramp for my alpha as input to my alpha, and for that I will just use regular black and white colors. Just change this to F and maybe send it all the way down to black, and for this guy I'll send it all the way to white. White is just a lot of F's. Okay, and I will send this to the alpha. Okay, this is what we have. I'm not sure I'm happy with that, but anyway, I'll get rid of, I'll take the color from here, and instead of plugging it into the base color, I'll send it into the emission, which is here, and I will set the strength to something like, let's try 100 for now, see how that goes. Let me use the actual renderer that I'm going to use in my final render, which is cycles. See what we have so far. So yeah, this is what I'm talking about. We have some bright parts over here and some bright parts at the top, and then in the middle it's a little transparent. We can play around with these guys a little bit more just to get a bit more color in there. That's looking a bit too transparent. Not sure that's what I want. I mean, yeah, you just have to play with these guys a bit more. Maybe if I change this to something not 100% black. Yeah, okay. Okay, so this is gonna let a bit more light through. Yeah, this is looking pretty nice. Not a bad start. Maybe I'll reduce the brightness of the environment, so I'll just set this to 1. Okay, that's a bit darker. Okay, and that's how I set the material for this ribbon of light. This is my method for it. You can play around with this a bit more if you want. The distortion's good. I'll just add a bit more. I don't want to increase the scale, I do want to increase the amount of detail in this. I don't know if this is going to work, will it ruin it? I think this is looking pretty good. Yeah, okay, so it doesn't show up too well in the material, in the shading view. Is that called the shading view? Viewport shading. but it looks really well when you shift to rendered view. Yeah. And yeah, that's it actually. We're almost done. One last thing I want to cover before I end this video is animating the rims. So at the moment, the rims don't really rotate, they just do their own thing. They just follow the empty. So what we're going to do is have them spin. So let me just look at it dead on from the left and show you something really quick. If I select this guy and I go into the transform properties, object properties, I can change this value and I will see that it's rotating. I guess I have to use a negative number. So what I will do is move it one frame and kind of judge how much I want it to rotate for one frame. So in one frame it moved from here to here. So I would ideally want it to rotate about 2 of these arc sections. Yeah, I think 2 of these arc sections is reasonable. What is 2 of these arc sections? Well, that's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 sections, so 4.5. 360 divided by 4.5. What is that? I don't know. 360 divided by 4.5. Okay, let's rotate it by 80 degrees every frame. So I want to rotate it by 80 degrees for each frame. But we have a total of 140 frames, which means over the course of the entire animation, I will have rotated 11,200 degrees in the negative direction. So let's set up keyframes for this. I will come over here, I will say Y, rotate, enter a keyframe. I will go to the end, I will set the number negative 11,200 and I will animate that. And now if we watch this, I don't know if you can see, but it is rotating every frame. Maybe if we look at it from here, it'll be a bit more visible. I doubt it, but let's give it a try. Yeah, it's not visible, but it is rotating. Let's see. Can you see? Yep, there. I don't know if you saw that, but it is rotating. Okay, that summarizes our video. We've covered everything. The light ribbons, making sure it curves, it tilts, making sure everything is aligned, there's no lag lead. Setting up the material for the ribbon of light and making sure the rims rotate. That's it. Congratulations.